Is your Kenmore dryer not operating when you set the timer and push the start button? Well, neither is this one. In this video, I'm going to show you guys the 3 most common issues that go on with these dryers, make them not run just like this. And one of the most common issues is this little guy right here. So in this video, we're going to talk about the 3 most common issues with this and exactly how to test them, how to diagnose it, to find out what's going on with your dryer. So let's get started and test this guy, because this is the issue with this dryer. Alright, one of the most common issues for this dryer here is actually in the back. And what you got to do, come back here, remove this back panel, which is actually fairly easy. There's just going to be screws all around, 1/4 inch. Alright, once you got that cover out of the way, you are exposing the whole back of the dryer. This cover here goes over this electrical port. You're also going to want to remove this because step 1 in identifying this is to make sure that you have correct power going to your dryer. One easy way to check for that is to check your circuit breaker panel to see if you blew the circuit breaker for this dryer. If not, you're going to want to make sure that you have full voltage here. Obviously, once you remove this cover, do not touch these little terminals here because they are live 240 volts and you will get shocked. Alright, to test if we have main power here, we're going to want to take a DMM, a digital multimeter, set it to volts AC, and we're going to want to plug in our plug. Obviously not touching that while it's plugged in, because that is a big no-no. And then when you touch the terminals with your DMM leads, you will get a reading. That's 240 volts, and then between this one and this one, you should get 120 volts. So we have full power going for this dryer. We know that for a fact. So we know that power is not an issue. So let's go to the first main, most common issue for these dryers of why they are not starting. The number 1 most common problem for these dryers and that they are not starting is actually this thermal switch right here. So what I'm going to want to do first is unplug the dryer. So with our dryer unplugged, I know that there's no voltage going to these, so I'm going to want to disconnect these terminals. And I'm going to want to take the same DMM that I've been using and set that over to ohms, or continuity will work as well. You're going to want to take the leads of your DMM and touch them on each terminal of the thermal fuse. And as you can see on the DMM, while you're touching both leads to both leads of the thermal fuse, we are getting absolutely no connection or no connectivity through the thermal fuse, indicating that the thermal fuse is actually bad. One way that you can test this, it's not advised, go ahead and connect these 2 leads with a jumper cable. And then when you connect these 2 leads, you plug the dryer in, you turn the dryer on, and it should run as it's supposed to run. That's not advised because you are dealing with 240 volts here, but that is one quick way that you could test it. You will not want to run your dryer with these hooked up without this thermal fuse, but you can definitely test it for a second. But again, it is not advised. I do not recommend that you do that, but that is one way that you could test it. So now that we know our thermal fuse is bad, we're going to go ahead and remove it. So this is pretty much all the thermal fuse is here. So we've indicated that our thermal fuse is the issue for this dryer. I have a brand new thermal fuse here, bought it off Amazon. I will put a link to buy this exact thermal fuse on Amazon. It is only $9. You can fix your dryer for $9, guys. So I will put that link in the description below. You can purchase this off Amazon. So I'm going to go ahead and take this out of the package. I'm going to put it right in where the old one was, and then go ahead and put the bolt in, hook up my wires, and test my dryer and see if it's all good. Alright, we got our thermal fuse in, got it all hooked up, we got the dryer plugged back in. We're going to go ahead and set our timer, and voila, the dryer works. Just like that, the dryer's fixed. Now let's say you tested the thermal fuse and it wasn't the issue. Say when you tested that thermal fuse, it tested fine. It had perfect continuity through it, everything was good. I'm going to show you guys the other 2 most common issues for this dryer. In order to test the other 2 issues for this dryer, you're going to want to remove these 2 bolts. There's 2 bolts that hold the top of this dryer on. One here and one here. Remember, before testing anything on these dryers, make sure you unplug them. Okay, with our dryer power unplugged and the 2 back bolts taken out of this top unit, we're going to go ahead and pull this top unit forward and then lift it off. We're just going to move it back. You want to remove your dryer length cap too. If you don't remove that, it won't come off. So then we're going to want to move this back. We really don't need to move much. And what we're going after right here is this connector right here. This connector right here is the second most common issue that goes on with these dryers. Actually, not this connector, but the door latch sensor. That door latch sensor right here goes all the way up to this connector here. So what we need to do first is disconnect this connector so that we can test it. Once we got the connector disconnected, you can see that there's two leads, there's two wires. So you're going to want to take your DMM, set it over to continuity, take your leads, connect one to one and one to the other. And again, there's no voltage running through this dryer. It is completely unplugged. So when you have those connected, we're going to go ahead and push our door sensor switch. And when we push it, you can hear our DMM make a beeping sound, and that's what, because it's on continuity. So whenever it senses continuity or connection between the switch, it's going to beep. So with that, we know that this switch is perfectly fine because it is operating normally. It is off, on, off, on. We're going to reconnect this guy, and we're going to move on to our third most common issue with these dryers, which happens to be the on-off switch itself. Okay, so the next guy we want to test is this on-off switch here. And to do that, we're just going to put our lid back on temporarily, and we're going to remove this upper portion to get to the connector of this switch. And to do that, it's fairly simple. You need to remove these guys here, which they pop off the bottom here, and then just lift up like this. So there's one on each side. And then that exposes two screws, one screw here and one screw there, and this whole unit lifts right off. We're going to definitely want to save these screws and not lose them. Once you have those screws undone, this just basically lifts up like that. And what that exposed is our on-off switch right here. All right, now that we have our head off, here's our on-off switch, and you can see there's two leads. And again, we have our dryer disconnected. There's no voltage going to the dryer at all. Here we have one lead, here we have another. There's actually two connectors, but they're going to the same lead on this side. So we're going to take our DMM, just like we did before, set it to continuity, and hook one up to the other. Electrical is pretty simple, guys, especially testing it. One up to one up to another. Then we're going to go ahead and turn it on and off. On, off, on, off. And you can hear our DMM is clicking, so we know that there is continuity going through that switch. So we know that that switch is okay. All right, so we tested quite a few different things on this Kenmore dryer, and we found out that the thermal switch was bad. In case any of you want to know, the thermal switch basically cuts the dryer off if the exhaust temperature ever reaches 309 degrees Fahrenheit. That's when the fuse blows and it shuts it all off. So what we put in here, we went in and we checked all of our ducting. We made sure everything was clear. We made sure there was no restrictions so that the dryer was not getting over 309 degrees Fahrenheit. We put in a new thermal cutoff switch. We also showed you how to test all the other most common issues of the dryer. So we're going to go ahead and put this thing back together, and we'll be drying smoothly tonight. One thing that I really love about working on appliances is most all of them come with wiring diagram of some sort. This one, and actually this washer over here, the wiring diagram is actually underneath this here. So here's the wiring diagram here, just for you analytical people out there. You could kind of trace it and see what's going on. This top one here is for an electric dryer, and this one here is for a gas dryer. So as you can see here, here is the black wire coming in, and you could trace it all the way down here. Here's our thermal cutoff switch, if you could see that. So it comes through this timer switch, the timer switch here, goes to the thermal switch, and then it goes on over here. So as you can see here, this is one of the main switches that is, or the main fuse switch that is run to run this whole unit. And as you can see here, the cutoff is 309 degrees Fahrenheit or 325 degrees Fahrenheit. One interesting thing is on the gasoline dryer, the cutoff is 352 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a bit different for electrical. But basically, this is our dryer. Running great. So I just want to say thank you all so much for tuning in, and remember you can purchase the part using the Amazon link in the description below. That is how you fix a dryer, the 3 most common issues that Kenmore dryers have.